Hello, my name is Fred Stodolak, the CEO of Panacea Healthcare Solutions, and today I'm going to give you a brief overview of our Claims Auditor product. Claims Auditor is actually a product that is licensed under two names for those providers or consulting firms wishing to perform audits solely for DRGs. I-9 or I-10 related audits. The product is licensed under the name DRG Check. For those providers or consultants or auditors wishing to do audits for both DRG, I-9, I-10, CPT, RAC, lost revenue or quality or medical necessity issues, we license the product under the name Claims Auditor. With Claims Auditor, the data included in the system is 837, 835, itemized bill information, or medical record abstracting information. The information could be loaded retrospectively. Most clients will include at least 2 years worth of information to begin retrospective audits immediately, and other clients have daily interfaces whereby payments and claims information every day is automatically loaded into the system. And as I indicated before, we can also interface with abstracting and other systems. So let's get started. What I'm going to do is to log in. And what we'll do is we will pick the Panacea Medical Center demonstration database. The first screen that you see here is our rules engine. What's great about this system is that you can write your own rules and have access to the data, or you could find rules in our library. As you can see here on the menu, we can create a rule. We can search a rule in our library, or we could actually search an account. And I'll show you these features as we go through. We could also create audit configurations whereby you would find multiple rules that you've written or that others have written and you will find in the library, and you can create a specific RAC audit configuration or a specific medical necessity or quality or lost revenue configuration, and multiple departments within the hospital could use this product at the same time. Or if you're a consulting firm, you could have different consultants performing different audits on different study areas. The nice thing about the system is there's also an ad hoc report writer. So one of the benefits is that, especially for those providers that have a daily interface, is that the system could also be used as just a central data repository from which you could write custom reports that may have nothing to do with auditing. And with the IT departments being burdened so heavily these days, this is a really nice feature. This ad hoc report writer is provided by a company called Logi Analytics. It's one of the top 5 web-based ad hoc report writer and analytical systems on the market today. And the nicest benefit is that this would automatically be integrated with the data stream interface with Claims Auditor. And the license fee alone for your organization would be about 3 or 4 times more than the license fee for Claims Auditor. In other words, if you were to just simply license directly from Logi XML just for the ad hoc report writer, you would pay more than it would cost to license Claims Auditor, and you would have to hire or utilize your own programmers to do those interfaces. So it's a nice benefit that we've thrown in with Claims Auditor. We would have to set up a separate demonstration on the ad hoc report writer at another time. We also interface with Wolters Kluwer's Comply Track rack tracking system and other systems as well. If you use someone else's rack tracking system, we could do an interface there as well. So to get started, I'm going to show you how easy it is to actually write a rule. So I'm going to call this a high charge and high length of stay rule. And this top section, this top general section here, is actually where we define the rule so that we can find it in the library among hundreds, if not thousands, of other rules in the library, or that others can find it in the library and include it in those custom configurations that I mentioned before. So this top section is just how we define it so that our own auditors or that others looking in the library could identify what this rule is for. The objective of this rule is to find inpatient cases consuming high resources yet without a CC or MCC coded. This is to identify cases consuming extraordinarily high length of stay or charges relative to the DRG, Medicare DRG rate or length of stay rate, where we would otherwise expect to see a CC or MCC coded, but we're not finding that. And that's the nice thing about this product, is that you can write rules to find things that shouldn't be. So the level of edits and rules in this system go way beyond what a scrubber would do, and it's instead designed to write complex or simple rules to find what shouldn't be. So this is just a good example. So this is a likely underpayment rule. We'll just call this a lost charge or lost revenue rule, and you'll see where this indexing benefits us later. We'll call this a moderate probability impact, and the qualifying conditions that the auditor would be looking for would be looking for documentation to support a CC or MCC. By leaving this check mark here, it's a rule that you are willing to share with other customers, and the benefit of that is that many of those customers or consultants have left that checked off, and as a result you will now find many rules in our library. It is your responsibility to read those rules and edit them as you see fit for your own use, but it's a nice benefit. If you wanted to keep this rule, or you felt this rule was only unique to your provider or project, then you could just simply uncheck this global rule. Down here we could define the universe. We often tell our clients that we have such a sophisticated filtering on the results page after you run these rules that you need not define the universe up front, with the exception of those items that will never change. For example, this would always be an inpatient rule, so we're going to define this as inpatient. And we could always filter at the payer code level on the results page, and we could filter based on charges and other things. And we could also filter on admission and date range, also in another step. So we don't want to restrict the rule that much. So what we're going to do here is say, okay, find me all the cases where the charges are 200% greater than the DRG rate, than the amount that we're being paid, and where the length of stay is also 200% greater. However, for those cases, we only want to select it for an audit if there's 0 CCs and 0 MCCs. If you notice while we're on the screen, you could write other complex rules based on the presence or absence of a DRG, the presence of a certain principal diagnosis, and the absence of a secondary diagnosis that you would otherwise expect to see, and vice versa. You've got the present on mission codes and many other features in this rules engine. We have the procedure codes down here, the presence and absence of procedure codes. We could even do rules that just simply count the number of secondary diagnosis or procedure codes as well. And we've got the E codes, discharge position, and many other things. One of the things I wanted to show you before we go on is that we could hide this inpatient screen and we could actually write outpatient rules as well. And there's the outpatient screen. And you could see we could import fee schedules. We have the CCI tables loaded. We could write rules with the presence of a HCPCS code or the rev code or the absence of a HCPCS code and revenue code. We even have service code level rules we can write. Claims Auditor is the only system we know of in the healthcare industry where you could actually write rules based on itemized bill information that's unique to your hospital. And that's especially important because there's many line items on your claim that have no HCPCS code or have no rev code. And we may want to write rules to look specifically for certain line item charges that are present or not present based on certain diagnosis or clinical information found on the claim. And with this product, you'll be able to do that. So going back to our inpatient rule, our high charge, high length of stay rule, what we're going to do now is we're going to save it. And we're actually going to run the rule. If we wanted, if we were a health system, you would see a list here of the other providers in the health system. We could run this rule against all or a group of providers. We have the option to restrict it based on date range. While I'm here, I wanted to show you that we also have a random sampling feature. You could do a random sampling or a seeded random sampling audit as well and not utilize the rules in the library. But in this case, we're just going to go ahead and run it without any of those parameters. And within seconds, we processed a few years worth of data. And you can see we found 133 cases here that had a high charge, high length of stay. We could filter it based on the financial class if we wanted. And I'm not sure which of these codes is Medicare. This is a demo system. Normally we would have the payer names showing up, but we could filter it to just Medicare. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here, and you can see these are all the cases that were found. And we can see right here, this top case is clearly a Medicare case. 65, the age is 65, length of stay was 15. The payment rate is based on a geometric mean length of stay of 3.6. Our total charges were $105,000, and we were only paid $9,000. The actual cost associated with $100,000 is probably at least $25,000, which would suggest that there's a high probability that this case has information perhaps that did not come down in the short 4 or 5 day billing cutoff period, and therefore we may want to select this for an audit. And we could actually, before we make that decision, scroll over and look at other information, diagnosis and procedure information, before we actually select that for an audit. If we want to select it for an audit, we would just check off those that we want to audit. We also could drill down to the charge level detail. And you could see what you're seeing here is actual line item level information from the uniform bill for this specific case here, Lola. And you can see the rev codes and the actual charges. We also have the ability to drill down, as I mentioned before, to the itemized bill level. In this case, for this demo system, we do not have the itemized bill loaded, but it suffices to say that that's information you can load if you wanted to see an even greater level of detail. So what I've showed you is how easily you can write a rule, run that rule against data, and identify cases for an audit. Now what I'd like to show you is how easy it is to actually create a configuration. What we're going to do here, we'll just call this demo quality audit config. As you know, reimbursement is more and more being tied to quality, and Medicare is paying now a higher reimbursement for those hospitals and physicians that have good quality. And so what we're going to do here is create a quality audit configuration. We're going to check this off. By checking this off, it's telling the system that we're not just going to select records for review, but we're going to pull the medical record, we're going to look at the documentation, and we're potentially going to change the I-9 or the I-10 codes, and we want to regroup, reprice, and run a nice set of reports associated with that. This could also be an I-10 audit. This can be a rack audit, as you see here. But in this case, we're going to say, find me all the rules that relate to quality. So these are all of the AHRQ rules. And we're going to say update the rule list, and within seconds we'll see if anybody has entered any rules that we might want to use. If you notice here, we've got a bunch of nice AHRQ rules, and to create a custom configuration, we could just simply check those off. Before we actually select them, we may actually want to view the rule. You can see this is to identify cases with a foreign body left during a procedure, which is clearly a quality issue. You can see the person that wrote this rule checked it off as a patient safety rule. You could see this rule takes into account the patient age. And if you go down here, we can actually see the specific codes that needed to be present in order for the claim to be selected for an audit. I apologize, I hit the wrong button. So what we'll do is we'll go back, recreate this. So again, we'll select the rules. You notice you can edit the rule too if you want to customize it for your hospital, or you feel the rule for whatever reason is outdated and needs to be updated. I'm not going to check all the rules off, but the idea here is to show you how you could find rules. They could include rules that you've already written, or they could be rules that are in the library written by others. Create this custom configuration, and you're all set to go. We could actually save this, and we could run it. You can see within seconds we found 29 cases right here that met the rule criterion, and you can see we had quite a number of cases with an accidental puncture, laceration, post-operative hemorrhage, birth trauma. We actually can sort on any of these column headings. So we could see grouped together. We could actually filter based on the rules. So if we want to see, well, how many accidental punctures do we have, we could simply click that, and you can see only the accidental punctures. We may want to just audit those and that's why we have that filter there. We could undo that. We could look at more than one at the same time. So if we click this, we can see the birth trauma. There it is down at the bottom, right here. We also could apply charge filters. In this case, it probably wouldn't apply, but we could say find me only those cases where the charges are greater than $50,000. And you can see right now we have 20 cases for these two rules. And when I apply this feature, it drops down to 14. So we can take into account the dollar value as well. I uncheck that. And let's see here. What we can do now is we can actually add cases to an audit. So the system found those cases that met the criteria in the configuration, and now there's only so many hours in a day. If the system selected, in some cases it might select 200 or 300 cases, but we only have enough time to review a handful of cases today, we can select those cases. We could select more than what we can do in a day, and the system will keep track of what's been completed and what hasn't. In this case, I'm just going to select a few. We're going to add them to the audit, and then we're going to go to the audit. So to summarize so far, I've shown you how easy it is to write a rule, how easy it is to find rules written by others, and how easy it is to create a custom configuration on any study topic. RAC, lost revenue, in this case we're using quality, find cases with quality issues. And now we've done that, and we have an auditor who's actually looking at the medical record and potentially making changes. So what we can do here is these cases selected would show up for the auditor, and they could actually go through one at a time on the screen, and they'll see all the patient demographic information at the top, some of the charge information. The auditor could write notes at the record level, and you can see there's no restriction on how many notes they can take. But what's nice about this system is they can actually change the codes, have revised codes, and you'll see when I click here, they could actually take notes at the procedure and diagnosis level. So we have notes at the record level, and we have auditor notes at the procedure level, and later on we'll be able to regroup, reprice, and run reports that show financial impact of these changes and a lot of statistical impacts, and show those procedures and codes with the most predominant amount of changes, and we'll be able to even see impacts by DRG, by doctor, by coder, by auditor, and so forth. And we also have reason codes that could be selected incorrect, and we could run statistics later on to see what was the most significant reason for change. Now in this case, these are I-9 changes, but if we're doing an I-10 audit, we can do that as well. The nice thing about this system is you can have your I-9 codes here, and you could actually put the I-10 codes as the revised codes, and when you go to run your impact reports, you'll actually see the financial impact going from I-9 to I-10, the actual impact as opposed to some estimate. And so if your hospital has already gone through training for I-10, the physicians have also been educated on the documentation, you might want to use the system to then have an audit done whereby the coding records are coded in I-10, and we can actually see with post-education what the financial impact is. It could also be done prior to education to identify those areas warranting some better education. The system could also be used in that instance after the audit is done. you could write rules based on those findings to create a baseline so that post I-10 you could monitor whether you're continuing to have those issues for those types of codes and documentation issues that you found during the pre-I-10 period audit. So we can actually go in and change this code, and we could actually regroup. I'm not going to do that right now, but if you wanted to add a grouping request, you can see here, we can simply choose the grouper, the CMS grouper, the APR grouper. We even have an ASC grouper for the outpatients and an APC grouper as well. So I hope I've showed you how easy it is to write a rule, to find rules in the library, to create a configuration, to actually start the audit. Once the auditor is done entering these, the supervisor could actually go in and approve the code. You notice here it says accepted. So if the supervisor approves the code, the auditor would recommend, and the supervisor could go in at any time and see what the auditor has done, and if there's recommended grouping and coding, the supervisor could approve it, and we could run reports based on recommended, auditor recommendations, or final approved. So with that, what I'm going to do is just show an example of what a report might look like. So again, once those auditor changes are made in the system, you have the ability to run this nice set of reports. These reports would normally take at least 2 or 3 days for a consultant to compile post-audit. And instead, as long as the new codes and the auditor notes are posted directly into Claims Auditor or DRG Check, within 60 seconds they would get all of these reports with all of these tabs by DRG. You could see the impact. It went from 216 to 237. The original DRG, the revised DRG. This could be I-9 to I-9. This could be I-10 to I-10. Or this could be I-9 DRG versus an I-10 DRG. And you would see the correlating descriptions, original and revised. You could see the reason for change right here, which is the benefit of the auditor choosing the reason for change while they're entering the new codes. We could see other information, the physician name. We could actually see not just simply the cost weight, but we could actually see the original and revised reimbursement. You could see in this case we actually lost $31,000. You could see the cost weight change as well. And we could see the number of diagnosis codes that were changed, the original versus new. And you could see the number of procedure codes changed as well. This is just a demo system, so shouldn't get that hung up on the numbers. But you could see how nicely within seconds we can get this report by DRG. There's some nice statistics on accuracy based on number of charts, by auditor, by DRG, accuracy based on diagnosis codes, and accuracy based on procedure codes. This is the same report sorted by medical record number, by patient accounting number, by medical record coder. You could actually see the medical record coder name, in that case, by physician, by reason code, by payer, and by auditor. We even have some detailed statistics and a reason code summary. You can see here we had 2 incorrect procedure codes. We had 4 incorrect diagnosis codes. Under I-10, we had 36 unspecified I-10 diagnosis codes, and so forth. And then we have a detailed data extract as well. So I hope that explains briefly how easy it is to use Claims Auditor. We do have an outpatient version of this I showed you how you could write an outpatient rule as well, and you can select outpatient records for a provider or physician records as well, and you can do an audit. And we are releasing a screen similar to this very soon, in the next 2 months, probably by January, that will actually allow you to put the revised CPT and rev codes in and run similar results reports. Well, thank you for your time.